Hello, I'm finally back. Sorry for the delay. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Koyomo brushes. So Koyomo stands for ancient goat hair. The characters for it, gu yang mao. So it's hair that was collected back in the 70s, and this vintage or old stock hair is of higher quality than hair that you find in brushes nowadays. So this video is just about ancient goat hair brushes. I have a series that I'm doing about different types of rare hairs. The first one was about Saikoho. You can go find the link for it in the description below. This is the second video in the series. So I'm going to be talking about this ancient goat hair that was collected in different grades. So there's Saikoho, there's Sokoho, and then these are all Ototsuho. I've talked about these 4 Ototsuho hairs before in previous videos. You can go watch them. I've linked them. They're a little bit rough because it's before I got a better camera and a better microphone, which I forgot to plug in, but oh well. Okay, so hopefully the audio is fine. So you can go see more of these brushes in other videos. I'm going to be focusing primarily on these two and the differences between the Saikoho, the Sokoho, and the Ototsuho grade, and whether or not it's worth it to upgrade the hair you get as well as to upgrade the handles you get. So of course, with the more higher grade, the more premium hairs, the price also goes up. And the handles that they make the premium hairs in are also more expensive than the more basic handles that they have for the lower grade Ototsuho hair. I'm not disparaging the Ototsuho hair at all. It's fantastic. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I highly recommend these. This video is to help you determine whether or not you should or want to go for the upgrade, or if you should collect all of them like I did. So I do the collecting so that you don't have to. So the first thing you should know is this company is not technically Kumano Fude. The company that makes these brushes is Tsubokawa Mohitsu. They're from a different town. They still use the Kumano Fude brush making techniques that we know and love with the uncut tips. So they're technically not part of the Kumano Fude Federation, but for all intents and purposes, they're Fude. And just so you know, Hakuhodo technically isn't Kumano Fude either. So there's one other brush company that I came to know of recently that also uses its old stock hair from the same town as the Tsubokawa Mohitsu company that makes these brushes. They have a vintage Saikoho and Kolinsky brush, which I am getting my hands on and playing with shortly. But this video is only about Tsubokawa Mohitsu's Koyomo. So in their lines, they have a face brush. So this is a big face brush. And this is the same brush head, just with a different hair. So Saikoho Ototsuho, the first thing you notice is the Saikoho doesn't quite flare as much. And if you can see in the video detail, the light kind of reflects off them a little differently. Without putting it under a microscope, I can't really show you, but this does have a thicker belly, and it does have more resistance and spring back Ototsuho in comparison to Saikoho. This is a little more soft, a little slower. It definitely does feel more soft in the skin. Both feel wonderfully soft, but the Saikoho feels more flexible soft. So neither irritate the skin. One just has more flexibility and glide compared to the other. Something to note that is special about Koyomo's Ototsuho is that it is very, very nice. Like, I would happily take this hair over a lot of Saikoho and Soko hairs from recent lines, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So between Ototsuho and Saikoho, there is quite a big jump in feeling as well as in performance. Ototsuho is stronger, it is faster, it is more efficient. Both of these brushes, the same face brush, they aren't the densest to begin with. So what this means is you're not going to over apply face color if you're applying bronzer with this or some sort of other color. You're never going to apply with either of these hairs, but the Ototsuho will noticeably go on a little bit faster. So comparing between Ototsuho and Sokoho, I'm going to pick up both the cheek brushes for this. Between the Ototsuho and the Sokoho, there's a little bit less of a difference that you can see, and you can feel it, but it's still hard to feel in a blind test. Unless you're really feeling and looking for it, you can't really notice that the hairs feel different in softness. What you will feel the differences is, again, this Ototsuho will feel a little bit firmer and have a little more resilience than the Sokoho. Both are soft, both won't irritate at all. It's just a matter of how flexible do you like your brushes to be. And again, efficiency, they're both GOAT, they're both quite efficient. This one's going to apply stronger color faster. And this is going to apply stronger color in a more buildable way, but it's still got enough density to it to really be efficient at applying blush color. So between Ototsuho and Sokoho, if you're going to upgrade, I say go big or go home. You might as well go all the way to Saikoho, because between Ototsuho and Sokoho, you'll feel a difference, but you might not feel that the difference in price that you're paying is worth it. And so I guess that kind of gave you my opinion between the Sokoho and the Saikoho. You might as well go for the Saikoho. Just go for the big boy and, well, get the softest one. Because otherwise you'll always be left wondering, I wonder, is the grade up going to be better? And I can't stress this enough. All three grades of hair are fantastic. You can't go wrong with any of them. If you really don't mind paying the price upgrade for Sokoho and Saikoho, go for it. The thing you do have to keep in mind is that when you upgrade to Sokoho and Saikoho, you will be paying more for the handle. Now, the reason why I got the face brush in the Suki, this long handle, and the Sokoho in this tulip, this Hana handle, is because this is what was available at the time. So now, if I understand correctly, you can custom order brushes. So you can get a Saikoho head on a Hana handle, or you can get a Sokoho head on a Suki handle. Normally, when I bought them, the Suki handles only had Saikoho, and the Hana handles only had Sokoho. They have a lot more different handles now. You can see all of their offerings in a link below. I highly recommend you check out that Google spreadsheet, because I tell you all the series that they have, give you a picture of what each series looks like, and tell you what hair goes with which series handle. And also you can see the price, so you can see how much you're paying for the handle versus for the hair. So they have a lot. I highly recommend that you check it out, because it's not something you can really explain auditorily. You need to see it visually. But these are sort of the OG series. The Nadeshiko, this straight handle Nadeshiko, pink pearl coloration, this Hana shape with the Izunuri Hananuri coloration, and this Suki, which is straight. They also have a Yuki, which is the same handle, but it's fluted. It has grooves in it. And these were the sort of original three. So Ototsuho on the pink pearl handle, this Sokoho on the Hana handle, and the Saikoho on the Yuki and the Suki handles. The reason why I got the Suki in the face brush is because it looks more balanced to me size-wise. I thought it'd be kind of weird to have a small brush head on such a much longer brush, and vice versa, the bigger head on the short brush. So this is why I collected the three hairs and the shapes that I did. So that's enough about the face brush and the cheek brush. For the eye brushes, I only have them in Ototsuho because that is the hair grade I decided I'm happy with. I don't need a Saikoho brush, and I am perfectly happy with these. So we have the round brush, and then we have the flat brush. The round brush is the original shape, and later on it came out with the flat brush. So the round brush is a little bit on the looser side for a round eye brush. So this is more of an application and a blending brush, not so much a pencil brush or a smudge brush. It doesn't have the density for it. This more multi-purpose flat paddle came out later, and as you can see, it's tapered to quite a nice thin tip. So this is a medium-sized all-purpose brush. I quite love it. And this brush head in Ototsuho, it only comes in Ototsuho. It doesn't come in Saikoho or Sokoho. It only comes in Ototsuho, and whichever handles are available with Ototsuho hair. So that's why I have these two brushes in Ototsuho and none else. The face brushes are worth trying in the higher grade hairs because there's just so much more of it to feel compared to eye brushes. Eye brushes, I'm perfectly happy with these because they're soft enough and they do the job and they do it really well. So to recap, Saikoho, very lovely. Between Saikoho and Ototsuho, you can definitely feel a huge difference. Between Saikoho and Sokoho, you can feel a difference, but unless you're going for like the really big brush, it won't be necessarily worth the price increase for you. So if you really want to upgrade from the Ototsuho, go for the Saikoho. But if you only want to treat yourself to like a nice handle, I think the Sokoho is perfectly adequate. Between the Ototsuho and the Sokoho, you can feel a difference. It's less, but you can feel the difference. So it's almost like the difference between a nice Ototsuho brush and a Saikoho brush in normal brushes. So that's the difference between Sokoho and Ototsuho in the Subokawa Mohitsu lines. And then the eye brushes I just have in Ototsuho. I don't have any of the Saikoho or Sokoho brushes because the Saikoho brush I think looks kind of weird, so I'm not going to get that. I am interested in getting the round brush in Sokoho in the Hana handle eventually, but it's just not super high on my priority list because I'm already so happy with these. These brushes have been featured in at least a couple videos. These have not. I honestly do use these less frequently, not because I don't like them, but because I am a total klutz and I am afraid of dropping them. That being said, I haven't dropped these super hard yet, and from the times I did drop them, they haven't shipped. So the reason why these handles are so expensive, and now we're going way out, not talking about the hair anymore, is because they're made by coating a wooden handle in lots of layers of lacquer. So you get this really dimensional, shimmery look. So, and then it seems like the Japanese really loathe putting a really high quality hair handle, a really high quality hairbrush on a standard handle. Hence, they upgraded all the handles for the Saikoho and Sokoho brushes. So the Sokoho brushes normally only come in this Hana handle, but you can special order them to have a Saikoho head on a Hana handle or a Sokoho head on this longer handle. So, how does the Saikoho, Sokoho, and Ototsuho compare to goat hair from other companies? I'm glad you asked. If you watch my Saikoho video, Saikoho is the grade above Saikoho. So Saikoho normally, the normal modern contemporary Saikoho to me is only like a half step better than this vintage Saikoho from Koyomo. Hang on, that's a tongue twister. Let me get this straight. The Saikoho, contemporary Saikoho, is pretty much only marginally better than vintage or Koyomo Saikoho. So if you don't want to splurge for a Saikoho brush or you don't want to wait for a limited edition to come out, definitely look into the Saikoho Koyomo face brushes. The only problem, I guess, is like this brush is a little bit looser and a little bit more flexible in terms of face brushes. If you're familiar with the Hakuhodo J104, it's much, much denser. This is much more suitable to being a bronzer brush and almost a finishing brush. So if you're looking for like a super dense goat brush, none of these brushes will be up your alley. The cheek brush is decently dense and has quite a bit of spring back, so I would consider it pretty standard, if not maybe a little bit on the looser side. And as I mentioned, the eye brush is definitely on the looser, thinner side, but they still work very, very well. So to give you an idea of how much they spread, this is the Saikoho. This is the Ototsuho, about the same, but I can definitely feel it pushing a little bit harder into my skin because the goat hair has more resilience, more body. It's like a bigger coiled spring. And then for the cheek brushes, because they are smaller and more compact, okay, yes, I can really feel a difference in terms of like how much it pushes my skin in. You see here, there's like that concavity. Here, there's not as much of. Could also be that my cheeks are uneven. No, this one definitely pushes my skin in more. You can see how this one is more flattened down. I'm pushing with approximately the same pressure. So as you can see, the Sokoho is more flexible. But as far as the tips feel, they're all super soft. So back to hair comparisons. So this is a Saikoho brush from Koyomo, and I did my Saikoho brush. The closest I found was and hair quality was the Koyomo Saikoho. I talk about more in that video. And I just have a bunch of goat brushes here. This is in no particular order. I'm just picking them up as I go along. Koyomo, Saikoho, and their normal lines. This is discontinued white mushroom. This is the BP016. Their Saikoho is among the silkiest, but it does have a bit more resistance. So their Saikoho's resistance is similar to the Sokoho in resistance. Tips still feel very soft, not irritating at all. The difference is in the friction. When you glide it across the skin, there's sort of like a little bit more of a tug because the hair cuticles and I guess structure is not as smooth as the Koyomo hair is. So it feels like it's tugging more, but I will say honestly, like the first time I used the Ototsuho brushes, they're so smooth. It's very eerie, the glide. It's almost like a synthetic nylon brush. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. It's just almost too smooth, if that's a complaint, but it does feel a little bit odd on the skin at first if you're not used to it. So that's wow, I'm losing my mind here. That's in comparison to the Koyomo Saikoho and the Koyomo Sokoho. So I don't know if you can really see the little texture, if the camera can really pick it up or not. The more recent Koyomo Yoshiki series, I feel like is a little bit more on the dense side for a face brush. If this is what you prefer, then these Saikoho brushes are fine. But I do have really come to appreciate the looseness of these face brushes because you can just really buff on color and it looks really pretty versus for the Yoshiki Koyomo Saikoho brushes, you do have to be a little bit more careful. This is actually the face brush. I couldn't find my cheek brush today. But overall, these are more dense than these, and also the feeling is different with the flexibility of the hair, and as well as the friction or lack thereof, the glide. Let's see, picking up the Sonia G, this Saikoho is, I would say it's a little bit better in some brushes than the Koyomo. Not all, but some of the Sonia G are more smooth than the Koyomo Saikoho and thus feel even closer to the Koyomo Sokoho. So the Sonia G's are definitely a good one to look into, and they're readily accessible. The only difference is it doesn't really come in this size, but hey, it looks like it could be siblings, right? So, hey, OEM, maybe? And then as for Chikuhodo, Saikoho, I'm sorry to say this is probably the poorest Saikoho that I have in comparison to Tanseido and Hakuhodo as well. Chikuhodo's Saikoho probably has the most texture, so if we can see this waviness going on, and then also, well, look down here where the brush hair isn't stained. So you can see the hair texture in comparison. And I'm going to pull this Ototsuho hair and put it right next to it and kind of move it around and see if you can really tell that the Takumi, this is the T4, really just has a lot more texture and waviness to it, and that's where the contrast and the shadows come from. Versus the light just like glides and dances on the smoother hairs. So, Chikuhodo's Saikoho in general, not a good comparison to any of the Koyomo hairs, I'm sad to say. Exception is the T5 and the T6. Those have like the smoothest hair. Takeda, I don't have any of the EXS. I only have their regular Saikoho brushes. So this is how it stacks up. Takeda has one of the softest and finest Saikoho in their normal lines, and I highly recommend them. So yeah, this is a good option to have, but the difference is you don't have pretty handles. However, you do get long handles on the Takeda brushes. So Tanseido's regular Saikoho is pretty comparable to Koyomo Sokoho. I would say the Ototsuho feels about the same, except for the Ototsuho is more springy and actually is smoother than the Saikoho on this brush, but just this brush for some reason. Maybe it's because it is a flat paddle brush and I did pick wavier hairs to have more texture on it. And then Hakuhodo's, they don't call it Saiko, they don't distinguish between Saikoho and Sokoho anymore, but this is definitely one of the finer goat hairs and very comparable again to the Sokoho. It's softer and more flexible than the Ototsuho. So if I was to collect brushes all over again, I would get the Ototsuho, get a Hakuhodo or Takeda Saikoho, and then get the Saikoho from Koyomo. That's personally how I would collect things, but I am very happy to have this Sokoho blush brush. So if you have any questions, please throw me. Oh, one more brush. This is Ototsuho from Sonia G. And let's look at the texture comparison. So you can see a lot more texture in the hair. And then let's compare this Ototsuho to Saikoho. So as you can see, this Saikoho is textured much more almost like Ototsuho. And this is just eerily smooth for Ototsuho. And then of course this Ototsuho doesn't compare to the Saikoho of the Koyomo brushes. And then something to note with these brushes is that the handles are sort of like this iridescently color, so they're much more pretty than my lights are allowing you to see. Same thing with these handles. They're just absolutely gorgeous. If you have a display case, you'll definitely want to be looking at them. This flat bottom is not super practical because the brush is so top heavy. If you put it on the bottom, it's not weighted at the base, it'll just tip over. So that's probably the only one design flaw I can think of this brush. Some people have noted that when they look at the printing on the ferrule, it's not all consistent. I did notice that with mine. Like some of the print is a little darker and a little bolder than others, so they have a little bit of a QA problem with that. I've definitely heard people complaining about it before, but it doesn't bother me so much. Like you can see one is almost like bold print, the other is not. As far as machining goes, very nice fit between the ferrule and the handle. This is completely smooth, and then there's going to be a little bit of a bump here simply because of how the lacquering process causes like more 3D wackiness in the handle. So like this is probably the least impressive fit, but it's still absolutely flawless, no catches at all. It's all rounded and smoothed over. So overall, I'm very impressed with Tsubokawa Mohitsu's brushes. I would say the only thing that's a must-have is the cheek brush. I just really like round cheek brushes. I think this is the perfect size, the perfect density for most people. If paddle brushes are your thing and not round brushes, totally understand, but I do think that everybody should have this as a round brush in their collection. Face brushes you have a lot more options for. If you like a looser face brush for like dusting and that type of thing, this really is a great brush to have, and I would recommend getting it. It's just that I know some people will be disappointed by its lack of density. Same thing with this round eye brush, very flexible because it's not a crimped ferrule, it's kind of loosely packed in there. You can see a little bit of space. So this is not the super densest eye brush, but it's a very functional eye brush. as is this one. It's not super thick or super resilient. They're just brushes that work. You won't be blown away by the density of them like you are with Tom Ford brushes, but once you start using them, like, they feel really, really good. So yeah, that's the Koyomo brushes, all three of them. Saikoho, highest grade. It's basically like contemporary Saikoho. Sokoho, which is pretty much modern Saikoho, and then Ototsuho, which is just awesome. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you haven't seen my Saikoho video, it's in the link below. If you want to see me applying makeup, like actually applying makeup with these Ototsuho brushes, I have 2 videos linked below. It's before I got a better camera, so the video quality is not great. The audio quality is not great either, but you can see how I use these brushes to apply makeup and their sort of functionality and their ability to like really build and blend out pigment. So if there's no questions in the chat, I'm just going to clean up here and then end the video. I'm also doing this stalling just in case I forgot to say something. Let's see. And then when I do get my hands on the old stock Kolinsky and Saikoho brush, I think I might do a video on that. I wouldn't really be able to compare the Koyomo, the goat hair Saikoho composition in the brush itself to these because of course it's a mix, but it's been really interesting to discover, or rather Toshiya Fude Japan discovered these brushes for us, and I was just so curious I ordered one. You're welcome. Oh, and I have one more Saikoho brush. This is a Bishoto one I got pretty recently. It looks hecka similar to the Hakuhodo 110, like eerily similar. This one does have a little bit, so between these 2 brushes, this is like the Saikoho, this is like the Sokoho. There's a little bit more texture and a little more firmness to this brush than this brush, even though they look pretty much identical. So that was kind of amusing. And yes, I totally did get this brush to see if it was a dupe for the 110 or not. And then this white mushroom is probably the sort of maximum density for what I would consider a good face brush. Anything more dense and it starts to run the risk of wiping away product when you're trying to finish. Tom Ford bronzer brush is an exception. But this, you can see the density of this Saikoho brush. There's a lot more hair when you squish it down in comparison to the Ototsuho brush. And you can see how the shape kind of stays squished down because there's not enough hair to kind of bring it back to the round shape. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time with another video on another rare hair. Good night or good morning wherever you are. Bye.